All right, so let's dive into all of this. So for context, yesterday while I was waiting to get on a ride for Disney World, I was made aware of a video in which Terry Evans, an apparent thief, walks into a Houston, Texas gun store, immediately walks up to the register inside the store, appears to steal money from the drawer, and bolts for the exit. Terry Evans, not that it should matter, happens to be a black guy. Evans was spotted by store employee Mark Winger, not that it should matter, but who happens to be a white guy. Winger presented a small revolver and shot Evans twice as he was fleeing the store. Evans would die of his gunshot wounds. And earlier this month, in October 2023, Winger was indicted by a grand jury on charges of murder for this killing, after which he was criminally charged with murder by the police. And the general Twitter consensus of this video is that the shooting was clearly unlawful for a variety of reasons. But most of these reasons were bad reasons. And in fact, I'm seeing them reflected here in the chat this morning. Let me see if I can find that particular one. Let's see. Somebody comments, I saw premeditated and first-degree murder when an armed man chased down and executed a fleeing victim. And that's all there is to say about this. It was murder and nothing else. Well, it may have been murder, but that's not why. That's not why. There are circumstances in which it's perfectly lawful to chase down and execute a fleeing victim. So the fact that someone was chased down and shot while they were fleeing does not automatically make it a murder. You need an actual reason, a legally sound reason, to qualify that as a murder. So when I was looking at Twitter yesterday, among perhaps the most common of bad reasons for saying that this shooting was bad was that Evans was shot over a simple property crime, and it's always unlawful to use deadly defensive force in the absence of a threat to persons, to defend merely personal property. And that's true in 49 states. Texas, however, where this occurred, is unique in that it does allow for the use of deadly defensive force in defense of simple property in the absence of any threat to persons for a specific list of enumerated crimes under specific conditions. That's Texas Penal Code 9.42. I'll link it in the description of today's content, but you can always find it at lawselfdefense.com/942. We'll pull up the Texas Deadly Force in Defense of Property statute. Another bad reason given for why the shooting was unlawful was that Evans was already out of the store and in flight. I just read a comment to that respect when Winger shot him. This might be a relevant factor if the justification for the shooting was defensive persons and Evans' flight was inconsistent with an ongoing threat to persons, but it's not relevant in the context of Texas defensive property law when the property crime remains in progress. The Texas defensive property law says you're allowed to use deadly force to recover the property, or if it would be unable for the property to be recovered. It explicitly contemplates the use of deadly defensive force after the taking has been perfected while the crime is still in progress. So the person being in flight is irrelevant here if the defense is the defense of property argument. Another less bad reason people argue that this crime, the shooting was a crime, was that Evans' theft of the property occurred during the daytime. And there are some enumerated crimes under 942, deadly force in defense of property, where you get the privilege to use deadly force to prevent that crime only during the nighttime. And this event took place during the daytime. So those enumerated crimes under 942 would not be applicable here because of the day of time. But that nighttime condition applies only to some of the enumerated crimes under 942, not all of them. And in particular, burglary is one of the enumerated crimes without that nighttime requirement. Also robbery, by the way. I'll circle back to that in a bit. So yesterday, my own view, watching the video, was that Winger shooting of Evans was likely lawful because Evans had entered the gun store for the explicit purpose of committing a theft therein. And I think that's the only view that can be supported by the video that shows Evans walking through the front door, or at least the news says he just walked through the front door of the store. He makes a beeline for the register, pops open the drawer, takes the contents out of the drawer, presumably money, and makes a beeline for the exit of the store. And my position yesterday was this conduct qualified as burglary under Texas Penal Code Section 3002, burglary. And if it qualifies as burglary under 3002, then Winger would be privileged under 942, deadly force in defense of property, to use deadly force to prevent the burglary if he reasonably believed the stolen property could not be recovered by other means. And clearly, had Evans completed his flight with the cash, the property he'd stolen would not be readily recoverable by other means. So that was my position in yesterday's video. While standing in that Disneyland last evening, however, I finally received a compelling reason, not a bad reason, but a good reason, why Evans' conduct might not, in fact, qualify as burglary. And that reason came in the form of a tweet from an account identified as Helvidius Priscus. I'm going to pull that up because I want to give him full credit for changing my mind. So let me see. Let me share his tweet here. This is it. So Helvidius Priscus writes, 3002A states, quote, without the effective consent of the owner, meaning the property owner, as a preface to the entering the building. This was a store. The owner gives effective consent to the public walking into the store. By your logic, shoplifting is burglary. It's simple reading comprehension. Try it. Now, first of all, I do want to point out that last snide remark there is simply him repeating back to me as that same snide remark I'd initially made to him. So to the extent that comes across as snide and inappropriate, that's my responsibility. Turnabout is fair play. I take no offense at my own snide remark being repeated back at me. But the gist of this, that the whole burglary statute requires without the effective consent of the owner. This was a business generally open to the public at the time. So there is effective consent, arguably, effective consent being given here. That's the question. So my response to that tweet was, as soon as I saw it, here. Fair point. I'll reconsider the matter, perhaps check the case law, meaning the broader appellate court decisions around the burglary statute. No point in making two errors. So I just want to make sure if I'm going to make a correction, I'm making the right correction. But at the time, I was about to get on the rise of the resistance.